Welcome to the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu.
Hi, everyone.
Today, we're taking a deep dive into a real cornerstone of branding strategy, the 22 Immutable Laws of Branding, a comprehensive guide to building a brand 1 Hour Guide by Laura Ries and Laura Ries.
Yeah, this book, it's a classic, published back in 2002, but the principles, still incredibly relevant.
Absolutely. It lays out these 22, actionable principles that can really make or break a brand.
What's fascinating here is how timeless these laws feel. Ries really, cut through all the marketing noise. They get right down to the fundamentals of building a powerful brand.
And their core idea, it's pretty straightforward, isn't it?
Basically, yeah. Branding isn't just luck or chance. It's about following specific laws. If you violate them, well, you're likely setting yourself up for failure.
They make a really strong case that in the end, branding is your most powerful marketing tool. And this isn't just for the marketing pros, right? It feels essential for leaders, entrepreneurs, really anyone who needs to influence perception, carve out that market position, and achieve lasting growth.
Oh, absolutely. It forces you to kind of shift your thinking, move away from those tempting short-term tactics.
Yeah, the quick fixes.
And adopt a much more strategic long-range view. For business leaders struggling with, how do we differentiate? How do we stay relevant when things are so crowded? How do we build real trust and recognition? This book gives you a solid framework. It gets to the heart of building that enduring brand authority.
And at its core, like the authors argue, branding is really about shaping perception. It's not just about claiming you have the best widget or whatever.
Exactly. Perception is reality in branding.
So today, we're going to unpack some of their most impactful principles. Laws like leadership, category, mind, focus, extension, fellowship.
Yeah, the big ones.
To give you a really solid grasp of what actually drives brand success.
And the thread that ties all these together, it's that constant emphasis on, clarity, focus, and just unwavering consistency.
Right. And they also give some pretty stark warnings, don't they, about diluting your brand through overextension.
Oh, yeah, a classic mistake. So many companies fall into that trap. It's a really comprehensive guide. And yeah, I'm excited to get into it.
Me too. This is the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu. Okay, let's dive straight into Chapter 1, the Law of Expansion.
Right.
This law basically says that a brand's power is inversely proportional to its scope, its breadth.
Which really challenges that common idea, doesn't it? That wider appeal always equals more success.
Totally. So, okay, let's unpack this. The main idea is that strong brands get their power from being sharply focused, clearly defined. But when a brand tries to stretch itself too thin, across too many products or targeting too many people,
it actually weakens its core identity. There's this real tension you see between wanting those short-term sales boosts by offering more stuff.
Right, the immediate numbers look good.
And the long-term health of the brand's equity. They use Chevrolet as a prime example.
Right, yeah.
At one point, they apparently had 10 different car models under the Chevy banner.
Wow, 10.
Yeah. And the result. Consumers, well, they struggled to connect Chevrolet with any one specific thing, quality, benefit, anything, and their market leadership kind of eroded.
Whereas Ford, with fewer models.
Ford, exactly. With a more streamlined lineup, they managed to keep a much stronger identity in specific segments.
That makes a lot of sense from, the consumer's point of view. When you're buying something, you're usually thinking about a specific need, right? Not some giant mega brand.
Precisely. If a brand name is just slapped onto everything imaginable, it just loses that sharp, distinct meaning. It becomes fuzzy.
It gets diluted.
And they give some really compelling examples of the consequences. American Express, for instance.
Right. The charge card.
Yeah, but then they launched all these other cards, student cards, senior cards, travel cards, even golf cards.
Trying to reach everyone.
And what happened? It actually diminished the exclusivity, the prestige of the original Amex brand. Their market share actually went down.
Huh. Interesting.
Same thing with Levi's. They offered more and more styles, different types of apparel, but their core jeans market share, it fell.
So more choice didn't help the core.
Nope. Even Crest toothpaste. They ended up with over 50 different variants.
50?
Yeah. And it undermined their leadership, allowed Colgate to eventually overtake them.
Those are pretty stark examples. It makes you wonder, why do companies keep falling into this trap? Why is expansion so tempting if it can be so damaging?
Well, the authors point out that those initial sales figures from new extensions, they can look really promising.
Right, the short-term boost.
Yeah, it creates this false sense of security. But those gains might not actually be due to the brand's strength. It could just be, weak competition or other market factors.
Ah, okay.
They talk about Diet Coke's early success. They suggest it was partly because Diet Pepsi had already kind of paved the way, establishing the Diet Cola category.
So Coke benefited from Pepsi's groundwork.
In a way, yeah. It wasn't necessarily proof that the Coca-Cola brand itself could just stretch into any beverage category successfully. Those quick wins can be really deceptive.
So what's the alternative then? What should marketers focus on instead of just expanding all the time?
The prescription from Ries and Ries is, well, contraction.
Contraction. Going smaller.
Exactly. Advocate for narrowing your brand's focus. The goal should be to own a very specific, well-defined idea in the consumer's mind. Laser focus.
Okay, so how do you actually do that? How do you put this law of expansion sort of in reverse? What are the practical steps?
Well, the first step, and it's crucial, is to really nail down the core idea or value your brand stands for. What's that essential association for your customers?
Got it.
Once you have that, you need to be pretty ruthless. Avoid any extensions that don't directly reinforce that core idea, even if they promise short-term money.
That takes discipline.
It does. You have to resist that internal pressure, to always broaden the scope. And you need to keep monitoring how consumers actually perceive your brand.
Check if it's getting blurry.
Right. If that perception is becoming unfocused, then contraction, actually pruning your offerings, is probably the right move. And finally, learn from your competitors' mistakes. If you see them overextending,
You stay focused.
exactly, stay disciplined, stay laser focused on your core. That can be a huge advantage.
So the fundamental takeaway here is that real brand strength, real recognition, it comes from being exceptionally good at one specific thing for a specific audience. It's depth, not breadth.
Couldn't have said it better.
Yeah.
And that leads us perfectly into Chapter 2, the law of contraction.
Ah, the other side of the coin.
Exactly. This law states that a brand becomes stronger when you deliberately narrow its focus.
It still feels a bit counterintuitive, though, doesn't it? Like, our gut instinct is usually to grow, offer more, but they're saying less can be more impactful.
That's precisely the core insight. Because specialization, you see, it breeds the perception of expertise.
Right. People trust specialists.
Consumers remember specialists. Think about a generic local store selling a bit of everything versus Starbucks. In its early days, Starbucks really zeroed in on coffee.
Just coffee.
And look what happened. Global brand. They even mentioned Howard Schultz's vision specifically.
That unwavering focus. And this is where they bring in the idea of category killers, right? That 5-step process.
Yes, this is a really useful framework. Step 1, narrow your focus sharply to one single category.
Okay.
Step 2, stock that category in incredible depth. Become the absolute go-to. The example they use is Toys R Us back in the day.
Oh, yeah. I remember.
They carried 10,000 different toys compared to maybe 3,000 in a typical department store.
Huge difference.
That depth, that specialization, lets you leverage your buying power, so step 3, buy cheap, which then allows step 4, sell cheap, offering competitive prices.
Makes sense.
And the final outcome, step 5, if you do it right, category domination. Your brand becomes synonymous with that thing. Toys R Us and toys, Home Depot and Home Improvement, The Gap initially with casual clothes.
Victoria's Secret, Comp USA.
Exactly. Those are all examples of category killers that followed this pattern.
So it's about becoming the undisputed destination for that one specific thing.
Precisely. And they tackle a really key misconception here, the idea that you should just copy what successful companies are doing now.
Right, just imitate their current strategy.
Their argument is, no, you need to look back. What did those companies do initially to get successful? And very often, that early phase involved a really tight narrowing of focus.
Ah, look at the origin story, not just the present.
Exactly. It's like that saying, if you want to get rich, study what rich people did to get rich, not necessarily what they're doing now that they're rich. The foundation is often specialization.
That's a really valuable distinction. They use restaurant chains too, right, as another example.
Yes. Domino's, Little Caesars, Papa John's, they all actually started with broader menus offering more than just pizza.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. But they achieved their major success, their leadership, by strategically narrowing down to just pizza, specifically pizza delivery.
Specialization again.
And that specialization let them streamline everything, perfect their core offering, and really dominate that specific niche.
So the key takeaway from the law of contraction is Resist the temptation for variety. Specialize deeply. Own one single, clear concept.
Absolutely. And to put this into practice, you need to really look hard at your current brand. What's your strongest association? Your best product?
Identify the core.
Then have the guts to cut the offerings that are just diluting that message. Reinforce your specialization everywhere: marketing, operations, customer experience. Double down on depth, not breadth. And keep resisting those expansion urges unless they perfectly align with that original focused concept. This is the 1-Hour Guide by Neil Nathu, helping you refine that brand strategy.
Okay, so from expansion's perils to contraction's power. Now we're moving into Chapter 3, the law of publicity. This one feels particularly relevant for, like, startups and entrepreneurs, yeah?
It is, definitely. The law of publicity states that the birth of a brand is achieved with publicity, not advertising.
Okay, so that initial launch.
This is a really crucial point for anyone launching something new. You need to understand this distinction.
It's about getting that initial buzz, that credibility through media coverage, news stories, that third-party validation, rather than just relying on your own paid ads.
Precisely. Publicity carries this inherent credibility that advertising just can't match. When, a respected news outlet talks about your brand, people see it as objective info.
Not just a sales pitch.
Right. Not just you bragging about yourself. The authors give some great examples. Anita Roddick's The Body Shop built its initial brand almost entirely around its ethical stances, environmental causes. That generated huge media attention, tons of word of mouth. Not heavy ad spending at first. Starbucks, too, in the early days. Relatively little spend on traditional ads, but massive growth fueled by positive press and just customer excitement.
So maybe advertising is more for, like, maintaining an established brand, while publicity is the real engine for launching a new one, getting it off the ground.
That's the key distinction they make. Advertising is definitely valuable for defense, protecting market share, reminding people about brands they already know.
Right. Maintenance.
But it's public relations, PR, that ignites that initial spark, builds that crucial early awareness and credibility that new brands desperately need.
Okay, so how does a new brand actually get that valuable publicity? It's not like you can just buy it easily, can you?
No, you can't. But the most effective way, according to Ries and Ries, be first.
Be the pioneer.
Exactly. Introduce a genuinely new category or a truly groundbreaking product. That inherently attracts media attention. They list classic examples. Band-Aid, the first adhesive bandage. CNN, first 24-hour news network. Domino's, pioneering pizza delivery. Rollerblade, the original inline skate. Federal Express, with overnight delivery.
All category creators.
Being a true pioneer just creates a natural, compelling news story.
Yeah. Being first definitely gives you that built-in newsworthiness.
Yeah.
And they also talk about leadership playing a role in attracting publicity too, right?
Absolutely. Reporters, journalists, they tend to gravitate towards category leaders. They're seen as the most credible, the most established sources.
Right.
So even just proactively claiming leadership, if you can back it up somehow, that can attract media interest and build public trust. The media, as they say, is always looking for what's new, what's first, what's hot. Think Charles Schwab, the first discount brokerage. Playboy, with its unique angle. Heineken, an early big importer. Intel, microprocessors. Gore-Tex, innovative material, all leverage being first or leading to get publicity.
So in those early stages, maybe the traditional marketing playbook is flipped. PR should come before advertising.
That's exactly their argument. You build that foundation awareness, credibility through PR. Then you use advertising to support and reinforce that identity you've already established.
Build with PR, maintain with ads.
Right. PR should be primary, especially in those critical early years. And to really do this right, you need to get your PR team involved right from the start. Strategy stage.
Not just an afterthought.
No. Develop strategies that are newsworthy, that are designed to get press. Then make sure your ads consistently back up the story PR helped create. And importantly, when you measure PR success, don't just look at ad metrics like clicks.
What should you look at?
Look at shifts in perception, increases in trust, positive word of mouth. Think of publicity as a long-term investment in your brand's resilience, its credibility.
And they also tackle that idea that if you just have a better product, publicity will just happen.
Yeah, they're very clear on this. The media and consumers too, they respond most strongly to what's genuinely new and first, not just slightly improved.
So focus on positioning, not just tweaks.
Exactly. Focus on being that pioneer, that innovator. Not just bragging about minor enhancements. They mention Miller. Regular beer, failing, despite big ad spend. What? No publicity angle. Nothing new for the media to grab onto.
So the big takeaway from the law of publicity,
Mm.
that initial brand power, that credibility boost, it comes from third-party endorsement. That external validation really helps a new brand lift off.
Exactly. Which brings us neatly to Chapter 4, the law of advertising. This law says, okay, publicity might launch the brand, but advertising is what keeps it healthy long term.
So advertising isn't the main builder, it's more like the sustainer, the protector of an already established brand.
That's right. They use a great analogy. Think of an established brand's ad budget, like a country's defense budget. Its main job is to protect your existing market share from competitors, not necessarily to go out and conquer totally new territory.
Extend the borders.
Right. They use Xerox as an example. Launched with huge publicity for its amazing new xerography tech. But once it was established as the leader, Xerox used consistent advertising to stay top of mind, to reinforce its authority in the copying market.
So we're looking at two distinct phases, really. The publicity-driven launch, then the advertising-led maintenance and defense phase.
Precisely. Once that initial media buzz naturally fades, advertising steps in. It's that reliable, consistent force defending your position, stopping competitors from slowly chipping away at your share. And the authors make a really sharp point about how established brands should advertise.
They argue it should mostly emphasize leadership, right?
Yes.
Not just constantly claiming better quality.
Exactly. They point out that most ads just claiming better quality often fall flat. Why? Because consumers are just skeptical. Everyone claims they're better.
We hear it all the time.
Right. But when an established brand consistently emphasizes its leadership, number one, most popular, the preferred choice, that message tends to be way more believable. It resonates more.
Because people kind of equate leadership with quality anyway.
Often, yes, subconsciously, they give classic examples. Heinz, America's favorite, Budweiser, king of beers, Coca-Cola, the real thing, Visa, everywhere you want to be, Goodyear, #1 in tires.
All leadership claims.
All reinforcing dominance. So the core strategy is build your ad campaigns around your proven leadership status. Don't just make vague claims about being superior.
Focus less on features, more on confidence.
Yeah, instill confidence that choosing the leader is the smart choice. Consistently repeat that leadership message everywhere. Anchor that perception. And, importantly, resist those unsupported quality claims that just get lost in the noise.
And they also talk about advertising acting almost like insurance for established brands.
That's a really insightful way to frame it. It makes financial sense. Consistent, high-visibility advertising can actually discourage competitors from launching huge attacks on your market share.
Raises the stakes for them.
Exactly. It helps prevent that slow erosion. It basically raises the barrier to entry for anyone wanting to seriously challenge you.
So think of the ad budget defensively, too.
Yes. Not just for growth, but as a necessary investment to maintain your position, except that it's a long-term ROI play for market presence. Use high-visibility stuff strategically prime time, big sponsorships to constantly signal your strength. And recognize that competitors with smaller budgets will probably be less likely to go head-to-head with a brand that maintains that strong, consistent ad presence.
So the main takeaway for the law of advertising for established brands, its job is to sustain dominance by reinforcing leadership and warding off competitors.
You got it. Now let's move to Chapter 5, the law of the word. This is where they really hammer home the importance of owning one specific, powerful concept in the customer's mind. This is a key element of the 1-Hour Guide by Anil Nathu.
Okay, the law of the word. So a brand shouldn't try to be everything. It should fight to own a single powerful word.
That's it, exactly. The ultimate goal is carving out that specific piece of mental real estate. Powerful brands. They instantly bring a distinct idea to mind.
Like a mental shortcut.
Right. Owning a word, simple, clear, maybe emotionally resonant, is the most direct path to that lasting presence.
And it can't just be any word, can it? It has to be specific, unique to your brand.
Absolutely. Not some generic benefit that all your competitors claim to. They give those classic enduring examples. Mercedes-Benz owns prestige.
Right.
Volvo owns safety. BMW owns driving.
Instantly recognizable associations.
Exactly. And sure, other car companies talk about those things, but those specific words are just deeply linked to those brands in our minds. Why? Because they were the first to really claim them and consistently reinforce them.
So owning a word, it simplifies decisions for consumers, builds that deep, long-term equity that's hard to shake.
Yeah, fosters loyalty through familiarity.
Shapes your whole marketing strategy, and even sets you up for focus expansion later if it aligns with that word.
Precisely. And they issue a strong warning here. Successful brands often face this risk. the temptation to broaden their positioning over time.
Trying to appeal to more people.
Right. Mercedes trying to go down market, Volvo pushing sportier models. That kind of broadening can actually dilute the very core word that made them powerful in the first place.
So how does a brand actually stick to this law of the word? What are the steps?
First, you got to identify the single best word that truly captures your brand's essence for your target audience. Focused, resonant, authentic. Then you must make sure no direct competitor already firmly owns that word. If they do, you got to pivot, choose a different word, or maybe even create and own a new subcategory.
Okay.
Once you have your word, reinforce it relentlessly in everything. Ads, PR, packaging, the whole customer experience. Be super careful to avoid anything, attributes, products, extensions that don't align with, and strengthen that core word.
Stay disciplined.
And keep monitoring consumer perception. Make sure that strong, unambiguous link to your words stays intact.
And becoming generic isn't about overtaking the leader. It's about being first to claim a word and then just keeping that communication focused.
That's a really important point, like IBM and computer way back when. And if you can't realistically own the main word in a category, narrow your focus even more. Create a new specific subcategory where you can be first to own a word. Think Federal Express with overnight within delivery, or Prego with thick in spaghetti sauce.
Owning the niche word.
Exactly. And they stress that these words get even stronger when they're consistently visualized, linked to your logo, colors, packaging, and reinforced in every interaction. You might even have to sacrifice some broader appeal to really truly own that narrow concept.
So ultimately, the brands that win long-term are the ones that stand for one singular powerful thing. It's all about simplicity, clarity, that unbreakable mental link between your brand and a potent idea.
Couldn't agree more. Now let's move on to Chapter 6, the Law of Credentials. This builds on everything we've talked about and adds that crucial layer of perceived authenticity.
Okay, credentials. So it's not enough to just be visible or own a word. You also need that proof, that underlying authenticity.
Exactly. Beyond just quality and visibility, the ultimate driver of long-term success is that perception of authenticity. And that's built on solid, compelling credentials.
A lot of credentials, exactly.
They're like the tangible evidence that bridges the trust gap. Proof that you're genuine, dominant, the real deal in your space. In today's world, consumers are bombarded with claims, right?
Totally.
So you need credentials and tangible proof of leadership, originality, expertise to make your other claims believable.
So credentials basically make your marketing messages stick, provide that foundation of trust.
Precisely. They use Coca-Cola, again, with its long-standing the real thing message that constantly reinforces authenticity, being seen as the original, the standard that builds incredible trust. They also have examples like Act Software positioning itself as the largest selling contact software to dominate its niche, or DataStream and maintenance software promoting itself as the leader, growing with the category. Even in smaller markets, establishing and communicating leadership builds that trust.
But not everyone just believes leadership claims automatically, right?
Yeah.
How do you overcome that skepticism and really reinforce those credentials?
Good point. The authors say that especially in new or fast-growing markets where customers might be less informed, people often rely on external cues, like media coverage or just confident leadership claims.
Signals.
Yeah. This creates a real opportunity to solidify your position by just consistently, repeatedly asserting your authority. They use the analogy of a crowded restaurant. You assume it must be good, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Social proof.
To further strengthen credentials, actively seek third-party validation awards, positive press, analyst endorsements. Strategically tie your credentials to the customer experience. If lots of people are using you and happy, that popularity itself becomes a credential.
Right.
Keep maintaining leadership through innovation and visibility. And never underestimate the power of just being around for a while. Longevity itself is a credential. They mention a study of 1923 brands. Most leaders then were still leaders 75 years later.
Wow, that's staying power. So ultimately, it's about shaping that perception of loyalty and authenticity.
Yeah.
Consumers trust brands that signal leadership, success, originality.
Exactly. And as Ries put it, every branding effort needs to either find an existing credential or build a new one, maybe by creating a unique category. Credibility starts with credentials.
Okay, moving on to Chapter 7, the law of quality. This is another one that really challenges some common marketing assumptions, isn't it?
It certainly does. The law of quality states that while quality is important, brands are not built by quality alone.
Okay. So just having the best product isn't the magic bullet.
That's the core argument. It challenges the idea that superiority automatically leads to branding success. In branding, perception, not necessarily objective reality, is what defines a brand's power.
So people use shortcuts.
Exactly. Consumers rely on perceptions, impressions, mental shortcuts, rather than doing rigorous side-by-side tests for everything they buy. So, yes, quality is essential as a baseline, but it needs effective branding to shape those crucial perceptions. They talk about the myth of the quality brand. Being objectively best doesn't mean you'll be the most successful brand. They use General Motors as an example, often made high-quality vehicles, technically speaking.
Yeah.
But they struggled to build strong, consistent brand identities tied to a clear perception of quality. Consumers often equate brand leadership and reputation with quality, not the other way around.
So perception is reality in branding. It's all about positioning.
Absolutely. Judgments are based on perceived truth, shaped by ads, media, word-of-mouth, personal experience. And once those perceptions, especially about quality, are set, they're really hard to change.
Like concrete.
Think about Heineken, perceived as high-quality import. Is it objectively the best-tasting beer? Maybe, maybe not. But the perception is driven by packaging, price, reputation.
Not just the liquid itself.
Right. So to align with this law of quality, what do? You focus on building the perception of quality. Understand how your audience defines quality in your category. Communicate that visually, emotionally. Use all your branding elements, packaging, logo, messaging to reinforce that perception. Avoid relying only on technical data. Perception drives judgments. Actively cultivate third-party validation awards, endorsements, positive reviews, influencers, and, crucially, position your brand as the category leader. Because leadership often equals quality in the consumer's mind.
And they stress that high quality isn't enough without that strategic positioning. The great product sells itself idea is mostly a myth.
Absolutely. Without branding, even the best product can fail. They mentioned Kmart maybe offered decent quality products, but lost the perception of quality against Walmart and Target, who had stronger, clearer positioning.
Right. Different perceptions of value.
Conversely, IBM's dominance wasn't just about hardware specs. It was built on that established perception of reliability, trust, support. And once that perceived quality is established, it's pretty durable.
People are more forgiving.
Yeah, more loyal. That's why maintaining a consistent brand image is vital. Confusion disrupts that quality perception.
So to keep that perceived quality strong, maintain visual consistency, align all touch points with the quality message, avoid deep discounting that damages perceived value, stick to core values, and continuously reinforce it subtly through great customer experiences.
Exactly. The key takeaway, perceived quality, not just actual product superiority, is the foundation of a successful brand. You have to master perception management. Branding is about becoming the brand people believe is the best. And that's a key insight from the 1-Hour Guide by Anil Nathu.
Okay, that brings us to Chapter 8, the law of the category. This is where they talk about leaders promoting the whole category, not just their own brand.
That's right. The law of the category says a leading brand, especially if it's first in a new space, should actively promote the category itself. Shift the focus to educating the market.
It seems a bit weird at first. Why help your potential competitors by promoting the whole category?
Because the logic is, by growing the whole pie, the leader who already has the biggest slice and the most recognition benefits the most.
Ah, rising tide lifts the biggest boat the most.
Exactly. If the category is new or unfamiliar, people might not even know why they need it. By educating the market on the category's value, the leader creates demand that they are best positioned to capture.
Gotcha.
They use IBM again. When they launched the first computers, their early marketing was all about selling the concept of computing, creating the market. Charles Schwab did the same with discount brokers, promoted the benefits of that model.
So it's about making your brand synonymous with the new idea itself.
Precisely. They give more examples. Rollerblade promoted inline skating itself. Red Bull basically created and promoted the whole energy drink category. FedEx promoted the concept of overnight delivery.
Educating the market built their leadership.
Yeah, it establishes the leader as the expert, the trusted source, builds loyalty, long-term growth. Consumers tend to reward the brand that introduced them to the category.
What if you're not first, though? Can you still use this?
The strategy shifts. If you're a latecomer, you often need to redefine the category, or, even better, create a new subcategory where you can be first. Trying to just overtake the established leader in their own category is usually a losing battle.
So the core idea is promote the category, especially early on, and you essentially promote yourself as the authority within it.
Exactly. Which leads nicely into Chapter 9, the law of the name. This really emphasizes the enduring power and absolute centrality of your brand's name.
Okay, so after all is said and done, logos, slogans, campaigns in the long run, the brand is really just the name.
That's the core argument. The name is the foundation. Everything else is built on it. A great name enhances everything. A poor name limits potential.
And names really stick around, don't they?
Think about it. Major brands from decades ago, Kodak, Coca-Cola, Campbell's, Gillette, they still exist, primarily because of the power of their names. People remember brands by names. They talk about them, recommend them, search for them by name.
Not usually by the slogan from 5 years ago.
Exactly. Logos change, taglines change. The name is how people connect. So choosing the right name, absolutely critical.
What makes a name right, according to them?
Needs to be distinctive, simple, appropriate, ideally. And it needs the potential to become valuable intellectual property. Aim for simple, easy to say and remember. Short is often better. Choose something unique, not generic or confusable. Make it feel appropriate for the product or category, hinting at its essence, maybe. Ensure you can legally protect it, trademark, domain name.
Right, the legal side is huge.
And they generally advise against acronyms or initials for new brands. They just lack meaning initially.
And they warn about weakening a strong name, too, right, by extending it everywhere or adding generic bits.
Exactly. Like General Electric becoming so broad it lost sharp focus, or using descriptive generic names like National Car Rental instead of something unique like Hertz. Distinctive names gain meaning over time.
Yeah.
And in global branding, the name has to work everywhere. Easy to pronounce, no weird meanings in other languages, adaptable.
That takes careful checking.
Definitely. Test it. Avoid idioms. Aim for universal clarity. Keep pronunciation consistent. Maintain the core identity.
So the name is really a long-term asset. Holds all the meaning, trust, emotion.
It really is. Leads to loyalty, contributes massively to valuation. You got to protect it legally, keep its usage consistent, avoid renaming unless absolutely necessary, nurture its meaning, and use it as the anchor.
So investing in the right name is fundamental. The name becomes the brand, and the brand becomes the business.
Couldn't have put it better. Which leads directly into Chapter 10, the law of extensions. This is a big warning sign they put up.
Okay, the law of extensions. The easiest way to destroy a brand is to put its name on everything. That's pretty blunt.
It is, and it's a crucial warning against reckless brand extension. The core argument. Brands are powerful because they mean something specific.
Right, that focus we keep talking about.
When you apply one name to too many different things, you dilute that meaning. The brand becomes less distinct, less memorable, less powerful.
But brand extensions are so common. Why are they so appealing if they're so dangerous?
Well, it's driven by that belief, often flawed, that strong brand equity will just automatically transfer to new products.
People love brand X, so they'll love brand X shoes.
Exactly. And you might see an initial sales spike, which looks good, but it can be misleading. Usually it just leads to confusion and weakens the core brand's identity in the long run.
Like the Chevrolet example again. Or Levi's going into all sorts of apparel.
Those are classic examples they cite. Extensions erode that sharp positioning, that ownership of a word. Contrast that with Rolex. They never diluted their high-end watch focus.
Stayed true to the core. So how do you avoid this trap?
First, define your core meaning and commit to that focus. Be disciplined. Resist chasing every shiny new opportunity.
Say no sometimes.
A lot of times, maybe. Create new brands for truly different categories. Always evaluate how an extension might impact the core brand's perception. And stay focused, even when things are going well.
They talk about that illusion of immediate success, too. The initial sales are just borrowing equity, not building it, and weakening the original brand.
Exactly. It's like taking out a loan against your brand equity that you might not be able to repay. And it's not just extensions into totally different categories. Even line extensions within the same category can be a problem.
Like endless flavors or variations.
Yeah. Too many variations can also dilute the brand, shift perception, make it feel less focused. Think about New Coke again. It failed partly because it violated Coke's core promise of tradition, the original taste.
So the strategic approach to any expansion should start with, does this align with our core promise?
Yes. If not, seriously consider a new brand. Maybe use a house of brands structure like P&G with distinct brands. Use sub-brands only with extreme caution and only if there's a clear, logical link that actually enhances the parent brand. Keep a close eye on customer perception and always prioritize long-term brand health over short-term sales bumps.
So it all comes back to clarity, focus, consistency. Resist dilution. Protect your positioning. Stay true to that single idea. More is definitely not always better here.
Couldn't agree more. Now let's look at Chapter 11, which is kind of counterintuitive again, the law of fellowship.
Fellowship. Okay, this one says, to build the category, a brand should welcome other brands. Welcome competitors. Really?
Yeah, it seems backward, doesn't it? But the core argument is, especially when a category is new or still developing, growing the entire category can be more beneficial than trying to just dominate it all yourself and shut everyone else out.
How does that work?
Well, competitors actually bring attention to the category. They create buzz, help educate the market, and this benefits everyone, especially the leader.
So having no competitors might actually be a bad sign sometimes. Like maybe the category isn't valuable.
Precisely. It can raise questions. Is this thing legit? Is there real demand? But when multiple credible brands are in this space, it validates the category. Customers think, okay, if several companies offer this, it must be worthwhile.
Competition builds legitimacy.
Exactly. They use FedEx again, initially alone in overnight delivery. But when UPS and others entered, it massively grew the whole overnight shipping category. And FedEx, as the established leader, benefited hugely from that bigger pie.
Okay, so to benefit from this, especially early on, you should focus on building the category itself.
Yes. In those early stages, prioritize category building. Focus your messaging on the category's benefits, not just your brand. Don't try to crush every single newcomer. Let them help build momentum.
Let them help validate the market.
Right. Position your brand as the pioneer, the leader within that growing category. Then later, once the category is established, you can focus more on differentiation.
So competition acts as a validation tool, like Red Bull helping define energy drinks, or Starbucks in the whole specialty coffee boom.
Exactly. Being the lone brand in a totally new space can actually limit your reach. Customers, media might not take it seriously. Trying too hard to block everyone can backfire.
So instead, embrace category growth. Let competitors help with the education part. Use the extra attention to reinforce your leadership.
Yes, exactly. Stay confident in your positioning. The pioneer usually reaps the biggest rewards anyway. Now, fellowship doesn't mean you just sit back and do nothing.
Right, not complacency.
No, you still innovate, watch your rivals. But recognize that early competition often lifts all boats. The goal is category leadership, not just defense at all costs.
So competition can be an asset, especially in new markets. Rivals help build the category. The strongest brand benefits most. Makes sense.
Definitely. Now, let's shift to Chapter 12, the law of the generic. This goes back to the importance of the brand name.
Okay, law of the generic. One of the fastest routes to failure is giving a brand a generic name.
Pretty clear message there. Generic names, the broad, descriptive ones that just name the category, they fail to build strong identities.
Like quality cleaning services.
Exactly. They lack uniqueness, memorability, that mental ownership. Successful branding needs distinctive, proper names, names you can build emotion around.
Why do generic names fail so badly?
Well, they describe, but they don't differentiate. They lack personality, no emotional hook. Plus, they're often hard to trademark, so competitors can use similar names easily.
Causes confusion.
Big time. And they're hard to search for, hard to talk about, hard to make famous. You gotta avoid that generic trap.
Oh.
Choose a distinctive, unique name. Avoid just describing the category. Aim for something that creates a mental image, sparks some feeling. Focus on proper names. Kodak. Xerox.
Even if the name doesn't mean anything at first.
Right. Meaning comes later, through usage and marketing. Think Apple had nothing to do with computers initially. Make sure it's legally protectable. And don't feel the need to have it explain everything immediately. Avoid those explanatory bits like ink. Aim for simple, memorable, proprietary.
They contrast something like the computer store with Apple, Dell, Compaq. The difference is huge.
Night and day in terms of branding potential, and it highlights that emotional impact. Generic names just don't have it. Branding evokes feeling, not just function.
Natural Foods, Inc. versus Whole Foods. Much more engaging.
Exactly. Engaging names get shared, remembered, respected to get that emotional power. Use language that evokes feeling, a story. Test names, ask people what it reminds them of. Avoid trendy names, aim for timeless, make it easy to say and spell, and weave the name into your storytelling over time.
And in the digital age, this is even more critical, right? Searchability.
Absolutely crucial. Distinctive, searchable name is key. Generic names just vanish in search results, hard to rank, hard to advertise effectively. Unique names let you own the domain, get clear search results, build recognition.
So for digital success, get the matching domain, consistent social handles, use the name in campaigns, design ads emphasizing uniqueness, focus SEO on the distinctive name.
You got it. The key takeaway. What you name something is as important as what you sell. Distinctive, memorable, emotional names win. Generic names just fade away.
Absolute critical point. Okay, chapter 13, the law of the company.
Right. Brands are brands, companies are companies. There's a difference.
So don't confuse the role of the brand with the role of the legal company behind it.
Precisely. Consumers buy brands, not companies. Keep the company name more in the background. Let the brands take center stage for clarity.
Why is that separation so important for perception?
Because they serve different purposes. Corporate identity is legal, financial. Brand identity is a marketing construct in the consumer's mind. Consumers care what the brand represents, its values, promise, benefits, not usually the ownership structure. Blending them just confuses things. Think Procter & Gamble.
Right, they own Tide, Crest, Pampers.
Huge brands, but you don't see Procter & Gamble plastered all over the Tide box. They keep the company name largely behind the scenes for consumers.
So the ideal approach, company is backstage, admin, legal, finance. Brands are on stage.
Exactly. Avoid prominent company name on brand stuff. It dilutes the brand's focus. Develop individual brand identities that resonate with specific markets. Keep branding strategies separate, tailored.
Use the company name sparingly.
Yeah, for things like investor relations, corporate PR, maybe recruitment. Not in direct consumer marketing where the brand should shine. They warn about the company overpowering the brand.
Like GM maybe did. Emphasizing GM too much.
Some argue that, yeah. Leading to brand erosion. Contrast that with Apple's streamlined corporate name. Let products like iPhone, Mac be the heroes. Branding should focus on the customer-facing name.
But there are exceptions, right? Companies that use the corporate name as the brand, like IBM, Sony, GE.
Sure, definitely. But that usually works best when they have a narrow range of related products or just massive long-billed equity in the corporate name itself. Even then, extending that corporate name into totally unrelated areas is risky, dilutes the core. Better to create new brands, usually.
So if you do use the corporate name as a brand,
be careful. Assess if the name really has strong, stretchable equity, limit its use to logical categories, invest heavily in building it as a brand if it truly aligns. Use clear visual distinctions if you have sub-brands. And monitor perception constantly. Don't let the corporate name overshadow the product brands.
So for many businesses, especially diverse ones, a house of brands is the better model, like P&G, Unilever, Nestle.
Often, yes. Multiple powerful brands, not tightly linked to the parent company name, gives you flexibility to target segments, test innovations, contrasts with a branded house where the corporate name is everywhere, which can limit flexibility.
So to build a strong house of brands, distinct names identities, build each independently, avoid relying on the company name, treat each as its own business, ensure internal alignment supports that independence.
You nailed it. Key takeaway. Don't confuse corporate and brand identity. Let brands connect directly with consumers. House of Brands often offers more strategic flexibility.
Which leads us naturally to Chapter 14, the law of sub-brands. Sounds like another warning.
It is. What branding builds, sub-branding can destroy. A very direct warning against overusing sub-brands.
So that attempt to borrow parent brand equity while creating a sort of new identity often backfires, creates confusion, weakens clarity.
That's the core argument. Sub-branding is often seen as a shortcut, right? Enter new categories without creating a whole new brand. But it rarely works well long-term.
Why not?
It leads to confusion, weakens the parent brand's core identity. They mention Chevy's Geoline confused buyers, diluted Chevy. Michelin trying a performance tire sub-brand diluted their core safety image.
So to avoid those risks, ask, does this new thing really align with the parent brand's core?
Crucial question. If not, it's likely harmful. Avoid sub-brands for totally different categories or value propositions. A new brand is usually better. Resist using the parent name just for a quick recognition boost. It dilutes long-term. If you must use a sub-brand, make sure it's super clear, narrowly defined, and actually enhances the parent brand somehow. And watch customer perception like a hawk. If there's confusion, it's probably hurting more than helping.
So the argument for standalone brands is strong. More flexibility, clearer positioning, no risk of a failed sub-brand damaging the parent.
Exactly. Think P&G again. Tide and Dawn are separate, not Tide cleaning solutions.
Right.
So, if your long-term goal is different, pursue a separate identity. Fresh name, visuals, strategy. Build new equity, don't just borrow. Create clear lines in the consumer's mind, one idea per brand. Strengthen the parent brand by keeping its focus tight.
Are there any cases where sub-branding might work? They seem pretty down on it.
They acknowledge rare cases. Maybe if you maintain very strong visual separation, position it to complement, not compete. Maybe if it deepens a specific feature enhancing the parent. Minimize parent name use if targeting a different base. But monitor closely, be ready to pull the plug if it blurs the parent image.
So the big takeaway, strong branding needs clarity and focus. Sub-branding usually weakens both. Launch standalone brands for new directions. Be brave.
Exactly. Which brings us to Chapter 15, the Law of Siblings. This offers a more strategic way to expand beyond the core.
Okay, Law of Siblings. So instead of stretching one brand or using confusing sub-brands, create a family of distinct sibling brands.
That's the idea. Target different segments or price points strategically after your core brand is dominant. It's for growth, but done thoughtfully.
Reach new markets without hurting the original brand's image, but needs careful execution to avoid confusion or brands eating each other's lunch.
Absolutely. To use this law effectively, identify adjacent but different markets or categories right for segmentation. Create a new brand with a unique name and identity. Avoid linking it too closely to the original.
Keep them distinct.
Clearly differentiate the siblings' focus, personality to prevent cannibalization. Coordinate them under the parent company, but let them grow independently. Maintain separation. Don't just use the same name with modifiers.
They mentioned the Japanese luxury car brands, right?
Yeah.
Lexus, Acura, Infiniti, all targeting slightly different takes on luxury.
Perfect example. And they also warn about the dangers of brand cannibalization when your own brands compete too much because they aren't positioned clearly.
Like GM again, maybe?
Yeah.
With all those overlapping brands historically?
That's the classic example they use. Eroding loyalty because the brands weren't distinct enough. To avoid that, establish a unique position for each sibling. Monitor market perception constantly. Don't use one brand as a dumping ground. Ensure internal alignment. And be willing to retire or reposition brands that get blurry.
So the goal is a balanced brand family. Variety without confusion. Independence with coordination. Strength through contrast. Strategic timing. Long-term vision.
Exactly. Multiply your brand strength across strategically positioned siblings, each owning a single idea and targeting a specific audience.
Makes sense. Okay, now shifting to visual identity with Chapter 16, the law of shape.
Right. This one's about the logo type. A brand's logo type should be designed to fit the eyes. Both eyes.
Meaning horizontal, because our eyes are side by side.
Exactly. It emphasizes functional visual design. Human vision is naturally horizontal, so effective logos are primarily horizontal. They're more comfortable to view, easier to recognize, more memorable, and more versatile across platforms.
That makes intuitive sense. It mirrors our visual field. Better adaptation for billboards, websites, mobile screens.
All typically horizontal formats. So, to apply this law, design with a horizontal orientation with greater than height. Use a single, legible typeface for clarity. Consider how it looks everywhere, print, digital, big, small. Avoid enclosing it in shapes unless really necessary can limit flexibility and make it distinctive, complementing the name.
And they emphasize the power of the word mark itself, right? Just the name, designed well.
Yes, often more effective than a symbol, especially early on. People recognize names faster. It reinforces the name every time it's seen, building recognition.
So for a good word mark, simple, bold, readable letters. Avoid fussy stuff like underlines or shadows. Use it consistently. Make sure it scales well. Aim for timeless design.
Spot on. And logo type versus symbol. Symbols take years and lots of money to gain recognition. Better to lead with the word mark. Use a symbol as a secondary element, maybe? Even iconic symbols got famous after massive brand investment, usually alongside the name.
So only use a symbol if it really adds meaning or helps recognition. Pair it with the word mark initially. Avoid constant redesigns. Use sparingly. Like app icons, let it evolve from the brand, not lead it.
That's the gist. Designed for visibility and versatility. Cut through clutter with a clear identity. That horizontal logo type maximizes readability. Focus on making the name instantly recognizable, not just being clever or artsy.
To ensure versatility, test in color and black and white. Check large and small, choose visible, complementary colors, use clear spacing, keep it timeless.
Exactly. Key takeaway. Horizontal word marks align with natural vision, boosting recognition and versatility. Simplicity and clarity are king.
Got it. Now sticking with visuals, Chapter 17, the law of color.
Right. This one's strategic. A brand should use a color that is the opposite of its major competitors.
Opposite, so use color for differentiation.
Precisely. Color is powerful for identification, differentiation, memory, especially in crowded categories. Contrasting with the leader helps carve out your own mental space.
Like Coke is red, Pepsi is blue. Classic example. Choosing a similar color just confuses people.
Exactly. Weakens your position. To apply this law, identify the dominant color in your category. Choose a significantly contrasting color. Use it consistently everywhere.
Don't overdo it with too many colors.
Right. Keep it simple, bold, and make sure the color aligns with your brand's personality while still differentiating.
They mention color psychology, but say distinction trumps just picking a color for its meaning.
Yeah, that's key. While colors evoke feelings, red exciting, blue calm, the primary goal here is distinction. Find a color that does both if you can, but prioritize standing out.
Now, brands can really own a color over time, right? Tiffany blue, UPS brown, John Deere green.
Absolutely. Repeated exposure makes the color synonymous with the brand. Huge strategic advantage and recognition. To build that ownership, start early, commit to one color, apply it consistently, everywhere. Avoid deviations, encourage media and partners to use it. Monitor competitors so they don't encroach.
And the risk of color confusion is real. Using a similar color just blurs the lines, hurts association, especially for smaller brands.
Totally. Like Royal Crown Cola using red just got confused with Coke. To avoid that, do a competitive visual audit. Test your color choice in context. Get feedback on distinctiveness. Avoid similar combinations. Perception is everything. Confusion costs you mental space.
So strategic color choice opposite the leader creates instant impact and differentiation. Consistency builds ownership. Powerful stuff.
Very powerful. Now let's broaden the view again with Chapter 18, the law of borders.
Okay, law of borders. There are no barriers to global branding. A brand should know no borders. Sounds ambitious.
It is, but the argument is that strong brands built on powerful universal concepts can succeed globally thanks to globalization and tech.
So think big from the start.
Ideally, yes. Global brands benefit massively from universal recognition: Coke, McDonald's, Microsoft, IBM. But it takes planning.
How do you develop a global brand effectively?
Build a strong domestic foundation first. Choose a globally usable name, easy to say, neutral meaning, legally available everywhere you want to go. Resist renaming or tweaking it for different countries. Maintain a unified brand identity. Use PR to build international credibility.
So that whole idea of heavy localization, changing names, messages everywhere can actually hurt the brand.
Often, yes. Compromising the core brand can confuse consumers, erode global perception, and cost way more to manage. Avoid over-localization. Do international trademark checks early. Design messages and visuals that work cross-culturally. Keep the same brand name. Avoid local versions unless absolutely unavoidable. Maybe fix the core brand instead. Align marketing teams globally.
They argue that crossing borders is actually a branding opportunity.
Definitely. It gains influence, share, credibility. Global status carries prestige. Think Nike's visibility on athletes worldwide.
So, to use borders as opportunities, plan international expansion early. Enter confidently with consistent branding. Use global events ambassadors. Leverage your global footprint locally. Use central brand management.
Exactly. They warn against the multi-local strategy, creating totally different brands or adapting heavily everywhere. It's counterproductive long-term, damages consistency.
So, avoid the multi-local trap. Centralize strategic brand control. Allow local execution within guidelines. Avoid multiple taglines unless essential. One global website online presence. Build global equity by amplifying consistent associations.
You got it. Key takeaway. Strong brands transcend borders with a consistent identity. Avoid over-localization. Think global.
Makes sense. Okay, Chapter 19, the law of consistency. Feels like we've touched on this a lot already.
We have, because it's fundamental. A brand is not built overnight. Success is measured in decades, not years.
The consistency of visuals, message, quality, positioning, it builds trust and loyalty. Constantly rebranding undermines equity.
Precisely. Consumers think in associations. Inconsistency causes confusion, weakens recognition, signals uncertainty. Think Coca-Cola's incredible long-term consistency.
So, to apply this law, define your core identity early and stick to it. Design consistent visual verbal identity. Resist change just for novelty. Develop clear brand guidelines. Reinforce the core promise in every interaction.
Exactly. The cost of inconsistency. It signals internal confusion. Think Holiday Inn's various sub-brands blurring distinctions.
How do you avoid those pitfalls?
Avoid refreshes just reacting to the market. Ensure new products align with brand values. Maintain consistent leadership branding teams if possible. Document brand history. Continuously reinforce the core story.
Because consistency builds that credibility. Familiarity breeds trust, like the Marlboro Cowboy example.
Exactly. So promote a consistent visual style, deliver consistently on the brand promise, use consistent taglines, stick with brand-reflecting advertising. Celebrate brand milestones to show stability.
And avoid that trap of overreaction, right? Resisting the urge to constantly tweak things.
Yes. What feels old to marketers is often just becoming familiar to consumers. Repetition builds recognition. To maintain consistency despite internal pressure, evaluate decisions for long-term equity. Educate internally on consistency's value. Create a brand stewardship team. Monitor customer feedback on recognition. Celebrate consistency as a strength.
So the takeaway is crystal clear. Long-term success hinges on unwavering focus and reinforcing a steady brand identity over decades.
Couldn't be clearer. Now, Chapter 20 acknowledges that change can happen, but carefully, the law of change.
Okay, law of change. Brands can be changed, but only infrequently and only very carefully. So consistency is king, but sometimes change is needed.
Exactly. It's rare, but justified sometimes. Maybe the market fundamentally shifts, the brand is genuinely failing, or the positioning becomes totally outdated.
But it has to be strategic, right? Not just boredom.
Absolutely. Driven by real potential for growth, addressing a root problem, not just a symptom. Before changing, ask. Has it truly lost relevance, or is it just bad execution? Does it conflict with the market? Will change open a real strategic door? Does it fix the core issue? Is there a clear communication plan?
They give examples of success, like Diet Pepsi's renaming or Anderson Consulting becoming Accenture, but also failures, often just changing visuals without substance.
Right. To avoid failure, any identity change needs a real shift in positioning, too. Clearly communicate why you're changing. Maintain continuity for loyal customers. Phase it in gradually if possible. Monitor the market response closely.
And the danger of unnecessary change is huge. Changing what works breaks connection, reduces trust, resists that marketer's itch to constantly tweak.
Exactly. Repetition builds recognition. To avoid unnecessary change, stick with what works. Focus on execution, not just updates. Consider minor refinements over big overhauls. Train teams to value long-term equity. Remember, power lies in customer expectation.
When is changing the name the best option?
Maybe if the old name is truly limiting you from entering new vital categories, like Western Union adapting beyond just telegraphs.
So if you do change the name, choose one reflecting the broader vision. Strong campaign explaining why. Build equity fast in the new name. Avoid confusing transitional names. Be bold and decisive.
Exactly. Key takeaway. Change is possible, but needs strategic necessity and super careful execution. Preserve equity while adapting thoughtfully.
Makes sense. Okay, almost there. Chapter 21, the law of mortality. This sounds final.
It is, and it's tough for companies. No brand will live forever. Euthanasia is often the best solution.
Whoa. So, except that brands have a life cycle, and sometimes you need to let them go, retire them.
Precisely. Clinging to fading brands is costly financially and in opportunity costs. You need to recognize when a brand is truly dying.
What are the signs?
Long-term decline despite revival efforts, lost relevance to modern buyers, no distinctive value left. Opportunity cost of reviving is too high compared to building new. Maybe it's even dragging down your other brands.
They mention famous examples like Pan Am, Oldsmobile, brands that just ended. Emotional attachment shouldn't stop the business decision.
Exactly. Handle the end responsibly. Plan the phase out, communicate clearly, offer transitions, use the opportunity to strengthen or launch something new, preserve legacy elements respectfully, accept mortality as natural.
And trying to resuscitate a truly dying brand. Often futile. Cosmetic updates don't fix underlying irrelevance.
Usually, yes. Nostalgia alone rarely works long-term. To avoid ineffective revivals, be honest about the market. Test consumer attitudes realistically. Focus resources on future-oriented brands. Avoid slapping legacy names on unrelated new products. Learn from the decline.
So ending dying brands actually creates space for innovation. Frees up resources for new things.
That's the strategic view. It's about clearing the path for growth. So regularly analyze your portfolio. Retire brands that aren't serving you. Reallocate resources, focus on relevant, resonant new brands. View retirement as strategic evolution, not failure.
Key takeaway: know when to let go. Focus resources on future growth, strategic maturity. Powerful lesson.
Very much so. And finally, the last one, chapter 22, the law of singularity. This really ties a lot together.
Singularity. The most important aspect of a brand is its single-mindedness. Back to focus.
Absolutely. Strong brands stand for one thing in the consumer's mind. Clarity is essential in a crowded market. Simplicity wins.
Because focus builds clarity, memorability, that mental hook. Our minds are limited. Avoid scattered messages.
Exactly. Think Volvo, safety, FedEx overnight, Domino's once 30 minutes. To apply this law, identify one ownable idea, narrow, specific, uncontested. Eliminate distracting messages. Avoid unrelated expansion. Align internal culture around the idea. Stick with it over time.
And the danger of trying to be everything. Dilutes the core, creates contradictions, leads to confusion, indifference.
Big danger. To avoid it. Evaluate decisions through that singular focus. Say no to things that don't reinforce it. Create new brands for new ideas. Monitor your core association. Resist pressure to broaden at the cost of clarity.
How do you choose the right focus?
Strategic decision. Based on strengths, market, competition. The ideal idea is unclaimed, valued, deliverable. Simple ideas are often best. Analyze competitors for gaps. Assess your capabilities. Test with consumers. Select a focus that allows evolution without dilution. Commit fully.
And reinforcing that singularity over time makes it stronger. Requires discipline.
Absolutely. Repeat the message. Ensure internal alignment. Celebrate heritage that supports it. Refine the focus, but avoid major repositioning. Use PR to consistently associate.
So the ultimate key: narrow focus until you own one idea, then relentlessly drive it into the consumer's mind. Simplicity is strength. One thing means everything. And that wraps up our deep dive into the 22 Immutable Laws of Branding, a comprehensive guide to building a brand 1-hour guide, brought to you by the 1-Hour Guide by Anil Anna.
Yeah, a really insightful, truly foundational set of principles. Essential reading, I think, for anyone serious about building a strong, lasting brand.
Thank you for joining us today. Buy the book at the 1-Hour Guide website for more business insights.